Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Kim with K Montes Studio. Join me as I review the Marabu art crayons and create this landscape. I wanted to work with this new medium that I purchased from my local art store from my previous video. I'll link that up in the cards. So, the employee there mentioned how great these are for mixed media. I had to try them. They're called the Marabu art crayons. So before getting into the Marabu review, I of course had to select an inspiration photo from the Plein Air magazine. I wanted to go for something subtle because I knew I wanted to alter the image to resemble the style in this previous piece I painted on site. The inspiration image I decided to go with was one of Daniel Marshall's landscape paintings. In this painting, he just used three major colors: white for the sky, blues for the mountains, and greens for the foreground. This painting is done in watercolor, and the site he painted was the Capitol Reef National Park in Utah. You'll see that my paper has a sketch. The sketch is actually not the mountains. It was a failed sketch from a previous still life I was working on. Because I knew the Marabus were water soluble, I thought it'd be best to test these out on watercolor paper first. This paper is Harmony 300 gram or 140 pound paper, cold press by Hanamula. I really enjoy this paper quality as well, and I wanted to give this review a fair chance, so I chose the higher quality paper. Alright, so let's jump into the review. My first impressions of the Marabu art crayons were, wow, I cannot believe these are not oil pastels. That's how creamy they were. They're very smooth, they glide like butter, and I love that they do not transfer. Unless if you really try to smudge things with your fingers, but they're not like oil pastels in that matter. I also love that they were water soluble. Look at how easy that blends. I just loved it. So you'll see that I'm using my water brush, and I also use my mister to get the paper slightly wet to create sort of a wet on wet effect. At this point in the review, I feel completely impressed with the quality of this crayon. I love how they blend, I love how they create this watercolor effect, almost as if I were using gouache, but they're their own category. They do have a waxy texture. However, I really appreciate how things come together in just that first little segment of the foreground. I was really thrilled at where I started and where I'm heading with this painting. So to give you some foreshadow, at this point I've tried these several times in several other pieces, and I definitely recommend them. However, while shopping at TJ Maxx, they had an alternative called King Art Mixed Media Gel Sticks. This pack came with 72 different colors and they ran for about 40 bucks. I'm sure you can find these on Amazon somewhere, but I had to try them to give a fair comparison. So the King arts are obviously different, but very similar in look and style. They have different pigmentations, yet they're still bright. However, you can tell that the Marabus have more pigment in them. The obvious difference that I noticed between the King arts is the binder, but they still perform in a similar format. So I would say they're an affordable alternative for those that are looking for a budget-friendly option to the Marabu crayons. So let's speed things up a bit as I get into the mountains and into the midground of the landscape, and stay tuned for the end. While working through some of the brown areas, things start to get a little muddy, and this was the perfect time to test if I was able to lift some of the color and it came off without a problem. With the water brushes, things were able to be cleaned up very easily. As the crayons have somewhat of a waxy texture, it did not make things difficult to clean. So it's time to test out how well the white blends with other colors. I know that with other water-soluble materials, it's hard to get that smooth, cloudy background. So what I'm doing here is basing the foundation with the white, bringing in some subtle blue stripes to tone the paper. And you'll see that I grab my mister to blend and create that wet on wet effect. I am immediately satisfied with this texture and this look. The Marabus do not leave any streaks. Compared to the Neocolor 2s, they tend to leave streak marks, and I know that's a hard comparison because the Neocolor 2s are a lot of people's favorites, but I tend to have issues with the Neocolor 2s and have to constantly keep in mind the direction that I'm coloring with the Neocolor 2s. So I really appreciate that about the Marabus. Alright, at this point I let a couple minutes go by to see how things dried. I would say this took about 5 minutes, and I made sure that everything was dry. I blended things out where I needed to, and of course I wanted to add other mediums to this, so to be fair, the overall review is done with the Marabus. So I would say I'd give the Marabus a 10 out of 10. The price is a little expensive. However, it's worth every penny. I really love the pigmentation. If you're just looking to get started with a water-soluble material, this is definitely a great starter. Even taking a stab at the King Art as an alternative for price reasons is also a great option. Moving into the mixed media portion of this landscape, I had to grab my Posca pens to add a little extra pop of color and something different to the piece. But then I thought, why not try the Marabus without water to see how that worked? And I also enjoyed that technique. This is the point where I take things into my own hands and I steer away from the initial inspiration, and I reference my original painting. What I love about this painting is a combination of multimedia and the layers that you can see on one another. I also wanted to recreate the same effect. Most of all, I really love those land lines and I had to add them in to this painting. So as we get closer to the end of this painting, I start to tie things together and put in little touches, and I unexpectedly add one of my favorite colors, hot pink, to this piece, and it just brought things to life. I know you can't really tell in this portion of the videos, but if you want to see the full image, please check out my website for the image. I really love using hot pink in a lot of my paintings. So to give you an overall review about the Marabu crayons, I would say they're fantastic. They're great at being a dry medium, they're great at being a water-soluble medium, and they layer very well. They work well with other mediums. They just are overall worth everything. They're great for beginners, intermediate level, expert level. They're good for children. I really appreciate these. And to be fair, I will also give some constructive criticism. The one disadvantage that I found while using these for the past couple months now are the lids. I think once I have worn down the color, the lid doesn't become such an issue, but when you first have that little nub that is showing with the clear lid, it tends to get caught on the material. So I do wish that we didn't start with that little nub at the top and that everything was inside of the container. So that's the one minor disadvantage to the Marabus. But overall, 10 out of 10, would recommend. So if you really enjoyed this video and you enjoy me reviewing different materials and would like to see more, of course, leave comments below and like and subscribe. And thanks for watching. See you next week.